Commander Marcus Chen felt like he had been fighting forever. 18 months of war in deep space was longer than any human should have to endure. His body ached in ways he had never known before. His mind was tired from making life and death decisions every single day. The Zephyrian Empire had been humanity's worst nightmare. These alien creatures were ruthless and powerful. They had already destroyed 3 human colonies before Marcus and his battalion were sent to stop them. The weight of protecting what remained of human civilization rested on his shoulders. Marcus looked down at his power armor. Once it had been beautiful and shiny, the pride of human military technology. Now it looked like it had been through hell. Plasma burns covered the chest plate where Zephyrian energy weapons had tried to cook him alive. Deep dents showed where their projectile weapons had hammered against him. Worst of all were the acid marks from their bioweapons, eating away at the metal like some terrible disease. But the armor was not the only thing that was broken. Marcus felt broken too. Command decisions weighed on him like stones in his chest. Every order he gave meant some of his soldiers might die. Every battle won came at a price that kept him awake at night. Sleep had become his enemy because dreams brought back the faces of good soldiers who would never go home. The mining station on Kepler 442c had been their latest target. It was supposed to be simple. Get in, secure the facility, and hold it until reinforcements arrived. But nothing was ever simple when fighting the Zephyrians. They had booby-trapped everything. Hidden weapon systems, automated defenses, and worse things that Marcus tried not to think about. The battle for the station lasted 6 hours. 6 hours of constant gunfire, explosions, and the screams of both humans and aliens. Marcus had lost 3 good soldiers before they finally cleared the facility. 3 more names to add to the list that haunted his dreams. When the dust settled and the all-clear signal came through, Marcus felt something he had not felt in months. Safety. The station's advanced AI systems confirmed what his exhausted soldiers already knew. There were no hostile life signs for kilometers in any direction. The perimeter was secure. Guard posts were established. For the first time in weeks, Marcus could breathe. That was when Marcus made a decision that would have horrified his commanding officers back on Earth. He was going to sleep without his armor. The thought was both terrifying and wonderful. He had been sealed inside the powered exoskeleton for so long that he had almost forgotten what it felt like to be just human. The other soldiers were already setting up their rest rotation. Sergeant Rodriguez was checking the outer defenses one more time. Private Kim was monitoring the communication arrays. Everyone had a job and everyone was doing it well. Marcus trusted his people completely. They were the best soldiers humanity had to offer. In the abandoned crew quarters of the mining station, Marcus found a small room that would do. It had a simple bed, a small table, and a tiny window that looked out into the star-filled void of space. For a moment he just stood there, looking at the bed like it was some alien artifact he had never seen before. Slowly, carefully, Marcus began the process of removing his armor. First came the helmet, and he breathed real air for the first time in days. Then the chest plate heavy with battle damage, the arm guards, leg pieces, and finally the powered backpack that had kept him alive through so many firefights. Each piece that came off made him feel lighter and more vulnerable at the same time. Standing in just his basic uniform, Marcus felt naked. The armor had been his skin, his shield, his weapon. Without it, he was just a tired man in a dangerous universe. But he was also free. Free from the constant hum of servo motors. Free from the weight that had been crushing his shoulders. Free from the claustrophobic feeling of being trapped inside a machine. He lay down on the bed and closed his eyes. For the first time in weeks, he was not planning the next battle or worrying about supply lines or thinking about tactical positions. He was just a human being, resting as nature intended. Sleep came quickly, deep and dreamless. What Marcus did not know was that the station's sensors had a blind spot. They could detect most forms of life, but they had never been programmed to recognize Zephyrian royalty. The biosignatures of the ruling class were different from common soldiers. They were older, more complex, and much more dangerous. Queen Vexalia of the 7th Clutch had been on the station for hours. She had watched the battle from the shadows, seen her own soldiers fall to human weapons, and studied the tactics that had defeated her forces. But most importantly, she had been watching Commander Marcus Chen. The Queen was not like other Zephyrians. Where her people relied on brute force and overwhelming numbers, she used patience and intelligence. She had been hunting this particular human commander for months, learning his patterns, understanding his methods. She knew he was dangerous in ways that most humans were not. Through the ventilation system, she had watched him remove his armor. She had seen the exhaustion in his movements, the weight of command on his shoulders. For the first time, she was seeing a human as they truly were beneath all their technology and weapons. Vulnerable, mortal, almost fragile. Queen Vex'ahlia could have killed him easily. Her claws were sharp enough to cut through human flesh like paper. Her natural armor could deflect most human weapons. Her speed and strength were far beyond what any unarmored human could match. But death was not what she had in mind. She had bigger plans for Commander Marcus Chen. Plans that would require him to be alive, awake, and able to understand what she was offering. The Queen settled into the shadows to wait. Patience was something her species had in abundance. She could wait as long as necessary. Outside, the human soldiers continued their patrol routines. Inside, Marcus slept the deep sleep of the truly exhausted. And in the darkness between them, Queen Vex'ahlia watched and planned. The war was about to take a turn that neither species could have predicted. The stars continued their ancient dance outside the station windows, indifferent to the small drama playing out among the metal corridors and recycled air. But for Marcus Chen, this moment of peace would be the last simple sleep he would ever have. When he woke up, everything would change. Queen Vex'ahlia had been hunting humans for 3 years, but she had never met one like Commander Marcus Chen. Most human commanders were predictable. They followed the same patterns, used the same tactics, and made the same mistakes. But this one was different. This one thought like a predator. She had first encountered his work on the battle for New Geneva Colony. Her forces had outnumbered the human defenders 10-1. Victory should have been certain and swift. Instead, the humans had used tactics that no Zephyrian commander could have predicted. They turned the colony's own mining equipment into weapons. They used the underground tunnels as a maze that trapped her soldiers. They fought like cornered animals, but with the intelligence of master strategists. By the time Queen Vex'ahlia realized what was happening, half her invasion force was gone. The humans had not just defeated her army. They had completely outmaneuvered it. When she finally learned the name of the human commander responsible, she made a decision that surprised her own advisors. Instead of sending more troops, she decided to study him. For months, she followed Marcus Chen's military campaigns. She watched him turn losing battles into victories through pure tactical genius. At the Titan Station siege, he had used asteroid debris as cover for a surprise attack. At the Battle of Proxima 7, he had convinced an entire Zephyrian battle cluster to chase his forces into a nebula where their sensors stopped working. What fascinated the Queen was not just his success, but his methods. Most humans relied on superior technology to win battles. Their weapons were more advanced, their armor was stronger, and their ships were faster. But Marcus Chen won battles through adaptation and improvisation. He could take any situation, no matter how hopeless, and find a way to turn it to his advantage. This kind of thinking was alien to Zephyrian culture. Her people had conquered dozens of worlds through careful planning and overwhelming force. They studied their enemies, developed specific tactics, and then executed those plans with military precision. It had worked for thousands of years, but it did not work against humans like Marcus Chen. Queen Vex'ahlia began to understand that she was witnessing something new in the galaxy. Humans were not just another species to be conquered. They were something that had never existed before. They combined the intelligence of advanced civilizations with the unpredictability of wild animals. They could create brilliant technology one day and use it in completely unexpected ways the next. The more she studied Marcus Chen, the more questions she had. How could such a physically weak species produce such dangerous warriors? How could beings with such short lifespans develop such complex strategies? How could creatures that seemed to fight among themselves constantly unite so effectively against external threats? These questions led her to make an unprecedented decision. Instead of trying to destroy Marcus Chen, she would capture him. But not as a prisoner of war. She wanted to understand him. She wanted to learn what made humans so adaptable, so resilient, so impossibly stubborn, in the face of certain defeat. The opportunity came when her intelligence networks reported that Marcus and his battalion were attacking the mining station on Kepler 442c. The Queen arrived ahead of them, infiltrating the station and hiding in areas where human sensors could not detect her. She watched the battle unfold from the shadows, taking notes on every tactical decision Marcus made. During the fight, she could have killed him easily. There were moments when he was separated from his squad, focused on objectives vulnerable to attack. But she waited. She wanted to see him when he thought he was safe. She wanted to observe a human in their natural state, not just as a warrior but as a living being. When the battle ended and the humans secured the station, Queen Vex'ahlia moved through the ventilation systems like a ghost. Her species had evolved from ambush predators, and she retained all their natural stealth abilities. Moving silently through metal corridors was as easy for her as breathing. She watched Marcus give orders to his soldiers. She saw how they looked at him with respect and trust. She observed the way he checked on wounded soldiers before attending to his own needs. This behavior puzzled her. In Zephyrian society, leaders ruled through strength and fear, but these humans seemed to follow Marcus because they wanted to, not because they were forced to. Then came the moment she had been waiting for. Marcus retreated to the crew quarters and began removing his power armor. The Queen positioned herself in the ceiling above his room, watching through a maintenance grate as the human commander revealed himself piece by piece. Without his armor, Marcus looked impossibly fragile. His skin was pale from months inside the powered suit. His muscles, while obviously strong for a human, were tiny compared to Zephyrian physiology. His movements were careful and tired, like an old warrior who had fought too many battles. But there was something else. Even exhausted and vulnerable, Marcus moved with the unconscious awareness of a predator. His eyes scanned the room automatically. His hand stayed near where his weapon would normally be. His body remained subtly tensed even as he prepared for sleep. This was a warrior who never completely relaxed, even in safety. As she watched him sleep, Queen Vex'ahlia began to understand something profound about humans. They were not strong because of their technology or their weapons. They were strong because they could function despite being weak. They could fight despite being afraid. They could hope despite facing impossible odds. This realization changed everything for the Queen. She had come here to capture a dangerous enemy. Instead, she had discovered something far more valuable. She had found a key to understanding the greatest mystery in the galaxy. Why could humans do things that no other species had ever managed? Hours passed. The Queen remained motionless in the ceiling, studying the sleeping human. She could have killed him with a single strike. She could have taken him prisoner and dragged him back to Zephyrian space for interrogation. But both of those options would have destroyed what she really wanted. She needed him to trust her. She needed him to talk to her willingly. Trust was not something that came easily between their species. Humans and Zephyrians had been killing each other for years. Every human had lost friends or family to Zephyrian attacks. Every Zephyrian had been taught that humans were a plague that needed to be eliminated. Building trust would require something that neither species had ever attempted before. But Queen Vex'ahlia had advantages that other Zephyrians did not. She was royalty, which meant she could make decisions without consulting military commanders or political advisors. She was intelligent, which allowed her to see possibilities that others missed. Most importantly, she was patient, which gave her the time to do this properly. When Marcus finally began to stir, the Queen made her move. She dropped silently from the ceiling into the corner of the room, where she settled into a position that was clearly visible, but not immediately threatening. She wanted him to see her as soon as he woke up. She wanted him to know that she could have killed him but chose not to. As Marcus's eyes opened and focused on her alien form, Queen Vex'ahlia prepared for the most important conversation of her life. Everything she had learned about humans, everything she hoped to understand about their species would depend on the next few minutes. The war between their peoples had reached a turning point, and neither of them knew what would happen next. Marcus woke slowly, the way soldiers learn to wake in dangerous places, not with sudden movements or loud sounds, but with careful awareness creeping back into his mind. First came the realization that he was safe and rested. Then came the memory of where he was and why. Finally came the understanding that something was wrong. There was someone else in the room. His eyes opened carefully, scanning the dim emergency lighting until they found the source of his unease. In the corner, sitting perfectly still, was something that should have made him scream or reach for weapons that were not there. Instead, Marcus found himself staring into alien eyes that held an intelligence that was both fascinating and terrifying. Queen Vexalia was unlike any Zephyrian that Marcus had ever seen. The ones he had fought were large and brutal, built for war and destruction. This one was different. She was tall and elegant, with smooth chitinous armor that looked more like natural skin than military protection. Her multiple eyes studied him with calm intelligence, not the burning hatred he had learned to expect from her species. The most surprising thing was that she was not moving to attack him. Marcus had seen Zephyrians in battle. They were fast, aggressive, and relentless. They never hesitated when they had an advantage. But this one sat in the corner like she was waiting for something, like she wanted to talk rather than fight. Marcus slowly sat up on the bed, his mind racing through tactical options. His power armor was 3 meters away, which might as well have been on another planet. His sidearm was closer, but he would have to go through the alien to reach it. His combat knife was in his boot, but even if he could reach it, what good would a knife do against a creature that could tear him apart with her bare claws? Instead of panicking or making desperate moves, Marcus did something that surprised both of them. He remained calm. Years of military training had taught him that panic was the enemy of survival. If this alien wanted him dead, he would already be dead. The fact that he was alive and unharmed meant she wanted something else. The alien spoke first, her voice a strange mixture of clicks and surprisingly clear English. The words came out carefully, as if she was translating from her own language as she spoke. Marcus noted that her accent was better than most humans who learned English as a second language. "You do not reach for weapons that are not there," she observed, tilting her head in a gesture that was almost human. "Interesting. Most of your species would be screaming or making futile attempts to escape by now." Marcus considered his response carefully. This was clearly not a normal combat situation. The alien was talking to him like an equal, not like a prisoner or an enemy. She seemed genuinely curious about his behavior. This suggested that she was intelligent enough to be reasoned with, which gave him options that force alone could not provide. "You had opportunities to kill me while I slept," Marcus replied, keeping his voice steady and calm. "You did not take them. That means you want something other than my death." The alien's mandibles moved in what might have been amusement. It was hard to tell with their facial structure, but Marcus got the impression that she was pleased with his response. She leaned forward slightly, her posture becoming more conversational and less threatening. "Your species fascinates us, Commander Chen," she said, and Marcus was surprised that she knew his name and rank. "Individually, you are weak. Your bodies are fragile. Your lifespans are short. Your technology, while advanced, is not superior to ours. Yet you have pushed the Zephyrian Empire back for the first time in 3 centuries. She moved closer, and Marcus could see the subtle differences that marked her as something special among her people. The crown-like bone ridges on her head were more elaborate than those of common soldiers. She had an extra set of smaller arms that seemed designed for delicate work, rather than combat. Most importantly, she carried herself with the absolute confidence of someone who had never doubted her own authority. "We have studied your technology extensively," she continued. "We have analyzed your tactics, dissected your political systems, and examined your military strategies. But we have never understood the source of your greatest strength. What makes a human fight when they should surrender? What makes them sacrifice themselves for others? What makes them continue to hope when victory seems impossible?" Marcus realized that this conversation was more dangerous than any battle he had ever fought. This alien was not trying to kill him. She was trying to understand him. And if she succeeded, if she really learned what made humans tick, she could use that knowledge to destroy his entire species more effectively than any weapon. At the same time, he was learning things about the Zephyrians that no human had ever known. They were not just mindless conquerors. They were intelligent enough to recognize that humanity was different from other species they had encountered. They were curious enough to want to understand rather than simply destroy. This suggested possibilities that Marcus had never considered. "I want to understand what makes a human fight when they should surrender," the alien repeated, her multiple eyes fixed on his face. "What makes them sacrifice themselves for others? What makes them hope when there is no logical reason for hope?" Marcus thought about the question seriously. It was not something he had ever been asked before, certainly not by an alien who could kill him with a single swipe of her claws. But as he considered it, he realized that she was asking about the fundamental nature of humanity itself. Maybe it is because we know we are weak, he said finally. We know we are going to die eventually, whether in battle or from old age. We know the universe is vast and dangerous and that we are small and fragile, but instead of giving up, we decide that our weakness is exactly why we need to fight harder. The alien considered this for a long moment, her head tilted in that almost human gesture of thought. When she spoke again, her voice had changed. There was something in it that Marcus had never heard from a Zephyrian before. Respect. You may be correct, she said. We Zephyrians are strong individually. We live for centuries. Our bodies are naturally armored and armed. Perhaps our strength has made us predictable. We rely on force because force has always worked for us. But you humans must be creative because you cannot rely on strength alone. Marcus nodded slowly. This alien was more intelligent than any enemy he had ever faced. She was not just trying to defeat humanity. She was trying to learn from them. And if she was willing to learn, maybe she was also willing to teach. What do you want from me? Marcus asked directly. You could have captured me or killed me. Instead, you are having a conversation. That suggests you want something that requires my cooperation. The alien's mandibles moved again, definitely in amusement this time. She settled back into her corner, making herself comfortable for what was clearly going to be a long discussion. When she spoke again, her words would change everything Marcus thought he knew about the war between their species. I want to make you an offer, Commander Chen. An offer that could end this war in a way that benefits both our species. But first, you need to understand something about the Zephyrian Empire that your intelligence services have never discovered. We are not the unified force that you believe we are. We are a civilization at war with itself, and your species has become the catalyst for a revolution that was already brewing in our society. What Queen Vexalia told Marcus next changed everything he thought he knew about the war. The Zephyrian Empire was not the single unified threat that human intelligence had believed it to be. Instead, it was a civilization being torn apart by internal conflicts that had been building for generations. My brother, Prince Kethmore, leads what you might call the traditional faction, the Queen explained, her voice taking on a harder edge when she mentioned his name. He believes that the Zephyrian way of life must be preserved exactly as it has been for thousands of years. To him, strength comes from rigid adherence to ancient customs and hierarchies. Marcus listened carefully, recognizing the opportunity to learn crucial intelligence about his enemy. But more than that, he was beginning to understand that this alien might not be his enemy at all. She was offering him information that could save countless human lives. But she was also asking for something in return. Your species represents something that terrifies the old powers, Queen Vexalia continued. You are proof that strength does not always come from size or natural weapons or following ancient traditions. A single human ship can defeat an entire Zephyrian battle cluster through improvisation and adaptation. This is chaos to minds that require order above all else. She moved closer to Marcus, her multiple eyes reflecting the dim emergency lighting as she spoke. Prince Kethmore and his followers see only one solution to the threat you represent: complete extermination. Not because they want your territory or your resources, but because your very existence challenges everything they believe about how the universe should work. The implications hit Marcus like a physical blow. This was not a war for conquest or expansion. This was a war of ideology, fought by aliens who saw humanity's adaptability as a disease that needed to be cured. No wonder the Zephyrian attacks had been so brutal and uncompromising. They were not trying to defeat humanity. They were trying to erase it. But you do not agree with your brother, Marcus said. It was not a question. If Queen Vexalia supported the extermination policy, she would not be here talking to him. She would be leading the assault herself. I believe that strength comes from adaptation, not from rigid adherence to the past, she replied. Your species has something that we have lost over our long history. You have the ability to change, to grow, to become more than what you were born to be. That is not a threat to be eliminated. That is a gift to be studied and perhaps even shared. Marcus began to see the larger picture. The Queen was not just offering him intelligence about Zephyrian military operations. She was proposing something far more dangerous and far more promising. She was suggesting an alliance between her faction and humanity against the forces that wanted to destroy both of them. What exactly are you offering? Marcus asked carefully. He had to be sure he understood what she was proposing before he could even consider responding. The stakes were too high for misunderstandings. Queen Vex'ahlia settled back into her corner, her posture becoming more formal as she prepared to make what was clearly an official proposal. My faction controls approximately 30% of the Zephyrian military and 40% of our industrial capacity. We have been preparing for civil war against Prince Kethmore for years, but we have lacked the catalyst needed to justify open rebellion. Your species could be that catalyst, she continued. If we can demonstrate that cooperation with humans produces better results than extermination, we can justify our rebellion as necessary evolution rather than mere political ambition. But we will need human cooperation to make this work. Marcus felt the weight of the decision settling on his shoulders. This alien queen was asking him to bet the future of humanity on a promise of alliance with rebels in an enemy civilization. If she was telling the truth, it could end the war and save both species. If she was lying, it could lead to the complete destruction of human civilization. What kind of cooperation? He asked. What would you need from us, and what would we get in return? Intelligence, she replied immediately. Real-time information about Zephyrian military movements, supply lines, and strategic plans. My faction has access to all of Prince Kethmore's operational data. We can tell you exactly when and where he will attack, what forces he will use, and what his objectives are. Marcus realized the incredible value of what she was offering. With that kind of intelligence, human forces could be waiting in ambush for every Zephyrian attack. Supply convoys could be intercepted before they reached their destinations. Strategic targets could be hit before they became threats. It would turn the entire war around almost overnight. In return, Queen Vex'ahlia continued, we would need human assistance in our civil war. Not direct military intervention, but strategic support. Your tactical expertise, your adaptive thinking, your ability to find solutions that we cannot see ourselves. You want us to help you overthrow your own government, Marcus said bluntly. He wanted to be absolutely clear about what she was proposing. I want us to help each other evolve, she corrected. The current Zephyrian Empire is a dead end. It cannot adapt to changing circumstances. It cannot learn from new experiences. It will eventually destroy itself through its own rigidity, but not before it destroys countless other civilizations in the process. Marcus thought about the battles he had fought, the soldiers he had lost, the colonies that had been destroyed. Every human death in this war could be traced back to the ideology that Queen Vex'ahlia was offering to help them defeat. But could he trust her? Could humanity afford to trust her? Why should I believe you? He asked. How do I know this is not an elaborate trap designed to make us lower our guard? Queen Vex'ahlia had clearly expected this question. She reached into a pouch on her side and withdrew a small device that Marcus did not recognize. It looked like some kind of data storage unit, but far more advanced than anything human technology could produce. This contains the complete battle plans for Prince Kethmore's next 3 major offensives, she said, placing the device on the small table between them. Dates, times, force compositions, objectives, and supply requirements. Information that will save thousands of human lives if used properly. Marcus stared at the device, understanding that she was offering him proof of her sincerity. If the information was accurate, it would demonstrate beyond any doubt that she had access to the highest levels of Zephyrian military planning. If it was false, it would expose her as a liar and probably result in devastating defeats for human forces. Take it, she said. Use it. Verify that the information is accurate. Then decide whether you want to discuss a more formal alliance between our peoples. Marcus reached for the device slowly, his mind racing through the implications of what he was about to do. If he took it, he was committing himself to at least testing her proposal. If the information proved accurate, he would have to seriously consider an alliance that could reshape the entire galaxy. As his fingers closed around the alien technology, Marcus realized that this moment would be remembered as either the beginning of peace between their species or the moment when humanity made its greatest mistake. But looking into Queen Vex'ahlia's intelligent eyes, he knew that some risks were worth taking. I will test your information, he said. If it proves accurate, we can discuss terms for a larger alliance. But understand that I cannot make that decision alone. I will need to convince my superiors that cooperation with Zephyrian rebels is better than fighting all Zephyrians as enemies. Queen Vexalia's mandibles moved in what Marcus was learning to recognize as her equivalent of a smile. Convincing skeptical leaders to accept new ideas is something we both will have to do, Commander Chen. But if we succeed, we will have given both our species a future that neither could achieve alone. 6 months later, Sergeant Rodriguez would swear to anyone who would listen that finding Commander Chen sitting across from an alien queen, sharing military rations and discussing philosophy, was the strangest thing he had ever seen in 20 years of military service. But at the time, Rodriguez was too shocked to do anything except point his weapon and wait for orders. Marcus looked up from his conversation with Queen Vexalia as his squad burst through the door, weapons ready and faces grim. He could see the confusion and fear in their eyes as they tried to process what they were seeing. Their commander, unarmored and apparently unharmed, having what looked like a peaceful meal with one of the most dangerous aliens in the galaxy. "Stand down," Marcus ordered calmly. "The Queen is here under a flag of truce." It was not exactly true, since there had been no formal truce declared, but it was close enough to the truth to keep his soldiers from doing something that might end the most important negotiation in human history. Rodriguez lowered his weapon slowly, his eyes never leaving the alien queen. "Sir, are you injured? Has this thing threatened you?" The concern in his voice was obvious. To his eyes, his commander was in mortal danger and somehow did not realize it. "I am fine, Sergeant," Marcus replied. "Queen Vexalia and I have been discussing matters of mutual interest. I need you to secure the perimeter and make sure we are not disturbed. What we are discussing here could end this war." The data that Queen Vexalia had provided proved to be devastatingly accurate. Over the following weeks, human forces began striking at exactly the right targets at precisely the right moments. Zephyrian supply convoys found human ships waiting in ambush along routes that should have been secret. Communication hubs were destroyed, just hours before major offensives were scheduled to begin. Battle clusters arrived at strategic targets to find them already evacuated and booby-trapped. The effect on Zephyrian morale was immediate and devastating. For the first time in their military history, they were being consistently outmaneuvered by an enemy that seemed to know their every move before they made it. Prince Kethmore's forces began to fracture as field commanders lost confidence in their leadership and intelligence networks. But the alliance came at a heavy price for both Marcus and Queen Vexalia. Human command was deeply suspicious of intelligence that came from alien sources. Many officers believed that the information was too good to be true and must be part of some elaborate trap. Marcus found himself defending not just his tactical decisions but his sanity as well. "You are asking us to trust an alien queen who could have killed you while you slept," General Harrison said during one particularly difficult briefing. "How do we know this is not exactly what she wants us to think? How do we know she is not leading us into the biggest trap in military history?" Marcus had expected this resistance. Military minds were trained to be suspicious, especially when something seemed too good to be true. But the results spoke for themselves. Human casualties had dropped by 70% since the alliance began. Territory that had been lost was being recaptured. The war that had seemed hopeless 6 months ago was now winnable. Queen Vexalia faced even greater challenges among her own people. Zephyrian society had rigid rules about contact with alien species, especially species that were considered enemies. By cooperating with humans, she was violating centuries of tradition and law. Her own advisors warned her that she was committing treason against the Empire. "You risk everything for creatures that most of our people consider to be vermin," her military commander warned during a secret meeting on one of her hidden bases. "Prince Kethmore has already declared you a traitor to the bloodline. If this alliance fails, you will have given him the justification he needs to eliminate our entire faction." But Queen Vexalia had seen something in Marcus Chen and his species that convinced her the risk was worth taking. She had watched human soldiers sacrifice themselves to save their comrades. She had studied human tactics that turned certain defeat into unlikely victory through pure determination. She had learned that there were forms of strength that had nothing to do with size or natural weapons. The turning point came 8 months after their first meeting. Prince Kethmore launched what was supposed to be the final offensive against human space. He committed every available ship and soldier to a massive assault, that was designed to end the war in a single devastating blow. But Queen Vex'ahlia had provided Marcus with complete details of the attack plan weeks in advance. When the Zephyrian fleets arrived at their targets, they found empty space. The human colonies had been evacuated, their populations moved to hidden safe zones. The military installations that were supposed to be destroyed were filled with automated defenses and booby traps. Instead of ending the war, Prince Kethmore had lost half his military in a single catastrophic failure. The defeat provided Queen Vex'ahlia with the opportunity she had been waiting for. She declared open rebellion against the old regime, claiming that Prince Kethmore's failures proved that the empire needed new leadership and new ideas. Within weeks, the Zephyrian Empire split into two factions, each claiming to be the legitimate government. The civil war that followed was brutal but brief. Queen Vex'ahlia's forces, supported by human intelligence and tactics, systematically dismantled Prince Kethmore's remaining military. The old guard that had ruled the empire for centuries found themselves outmaneuvered at every turn by rebels who had learned to think like humans. When the fighting ended, both species found themselves in a galaxy that neither had imagined possible. The Zephyrian Empire was gone, replaced by a new government that believed in adaptation and cooperation rather than conquest and domination. Humanity was no longer facing extinction, but instead had gained an ally that could help them explore and settle the galaxy safely. Years later, when historians from both species studied the war and its aftermath, they would point to many factors that led to the unexpected peace. Advanced weapons, brilliant tactics, political maneuvering, and economic pressures all played their parts. But those who were there knew that the real turning point came in a small room on a mining station, when a tired soldier chose to trust an alien queen. Marcus Chen retired from military service after the peace treaties were signed, but he remained involved in human-Zephyrian relations as a civilian advisor. When young officers asked him about the secret to his success, he would tell them about the night he slept without his armor and woke up to find the enemy waiting for him. "Sometimes the greatest armor is knowing when to take it off," he would say. Queen Vex'ahlia could have ended me when I was most vulnerable, but instead she chose to understand me. That was not the action of an enemy. That was the action of someone who saw a future worth building together. Queen Vex'ahlia, now Empress of the new Zephyrian Republic, established exchange programs that allowed humans and Zephyrians to learn from each other. Young Zephyrians learned human adaptability and creative thinking. Young humans learned Zephyrian patience and long-term planning. Both species discovered that their greatest strength lay not in their weapons or their armor, but in their willingness to see beyond what they thought was possible. The galaxy became a safer place, not because one species had conquered another, but because two very different peoples had learned to trust each other. Trade routes opened between human and Zephyrian space. Joint exploration missions discovered new worlds that both species could share. Scientific cooperation led to advances that neither could have achieved alone. But perhaps the most important change was in how both species thought about themselves and their place in the universe. Humans learned that their greatest weapon was not their technology, but their ability to change and grow. Zephyrians learned that true strength came not from rigid tradition but from the courage to evolve. The war that began as humanity's desperate fight for survival ended with two species, learning that their greatest enemy was not each other, but their own fear of change. And it all started because a tired soldier dared to sleep without his armor, and an alien queen chose curiosity over conquest. In the end, the greatest battles are not always won with weapons and armor. Sometimes they are won with trust, understanding, and the courage to be vulnerable when vulnerability seems like the most dangerous choice of all. Marcus Chen and Queen Vex'ahlia proved that even in the vast darkness of space, hope could light the way to a better future for everyone.